I never thought I would end up living in a neighborhood with an HOA, but when my company relocated me for a promotion, the timing was tight and the houses in my price range were limited. The subdivision looked pleasant enough during the walk-through: manicured lawns, freshly painted mailboxes, children playing in cul-de-sacs. What the realtor conveniently failed to mention was that our HOA president, Karen Westbrook, treated the neighborhood covenants like they were constitutional amendments, and herself like she was the Supreme Court. The first time I met Karen was 3 days after moving in. I was still unpacking boxes when my doorbell rang at exactly 7:15 in the morning. I opened the door to find a woman in her mid-40s with an aggressively styled bob haircut and a clipboard that she held like a weapon. "Hello, I'm Karen Westbrook, HOA president. I notice your trash cans are still visible from the street. According to Section 4.2 of our covenants, all refuse containers must be stored out of sight except on collection days. That was yesterday. You have until noon to correct this violation, or you will receive a $50 fine." Before I could even introduce myself, she had turned on her heel and marched back to her house directly across the street, where I would soon learn she maintained a watchful position at her front window like a suburban sentinel. Over the following months, Karen's violations notices became a regular occurrence. My lawn was a 1/4 inch too tall. My car was parked facing the wrong direction overnight. My outdoor light fixture was not on the approved list, even though it was identical to 3 other houses on the block. I tried being reasonable, attending HOA meetings, politely explaining that some of her interpretations seemed overly strict. But Karen had a response for everything, delivered with a sugary smile that never reached her eyes. The rules are the rules. If you did not want to follow them, perhaps you should have chosen a different neighborhood. If you are enjoying this story of suburban justice, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Karen 8 World for more tales of entitled people getting exactly what they deserve. Your support helps us bring you more satisfying stories of karmic revenge every single week. Now, back to our story. What Karen did not know about me was that my promotion was actually a position as regional legal counsel for a national real estate development firm. I had spent 15 years navigating property law, zoning regulations, and contract disputes. I had connections with city planners, real estate attorneys, and investment groups. And I had the financial resources of someone who had been climbing the corporate ladder since law school. But I kept my head down and paid Karen's petty fines, biding my time and watching her operate. Karen's true nature revealed itself most clearly in how she treated the neighborhood children. There was a small common area at the end of our street, technically HOA property, with some grass and a few trees. Kids would occasionally play there, nothing rowdy, just tag or catch or riding bikes. Karen hated it. She would come out and lecture them about staying off HOA-maintained grass, insisting they play in their own yards. Most parents started keeping their kids away from that area just to avoid her wrath. Then came the incident with Tommy Chin, an 8-year-old boy from 2 houses down. Tommy was a sweet kid, a little shy, who loved playing with his toy cars. One Saturday afternoon in late spring, Tommy was walking home from his friend's house, rolling one of his toy trucks along the sidewalk. The truck got away from him and rolled onto the corner of Karen's lawn, maybe 2 feet past the sidewalk. Tommy, being 8 years old and not thinking about property boundaries, stepped onto her grass to retrieve his toy. I happened to be checking my mail when I heard Karen's front door slam open. She had apparently been watching from her window, because she moved with frightening speed for someone who spent most of her time sitting down. "You stop right there," she shrieked, marching across her lawn toward Tommy. The little boy froze, his toy truck clutched in his hand, his eyes wide with fear. What happened next occurred so quickly that I almost could not process it. Karen grabbed Tommy by the upper arm and began dragging him toward her house. Tommy started crying, trying to pull away, calling for his mom. "You are trespassing on my property," Karen announced loudly, as if she were addressing an audience. "I am making a citizen's arrest until the police arrive." I dropped my mail and started running toward them, but Karen had already pulled Tommy up her front steps and into her house, slamming the door behind them. I immediately called 911 while running to Tommy's house to alert his parents. Within minutes, Tommy's mother, Jennifer Chin, was at Karen's door, pounding and screaming for her son. Karen shouted through the door that she had called the police to report a trespasser, and that we all needed to stay back from her property. The absurdity of the situation was almost incomprehensible. She had physically grabbed a child and locked him inside her house over a toy truck rolling onto her lawn. The police arrived within 10 minutes, which felt like an eternity. Jennifer was nearly hysterical, and I was standing by ready to provide a witness statement. 2 officers approached Karen's door, and she opened it with a triumphant expression, already launching into her complaint. "Officers, thank goodness you are here. This child was trespassing on my property, and when I attempted to detain him until you arrived, these people began harassing me on my own front lawn." The older of the 2 officers, a sergeant with graying hair and the patient expression of someone who had seen everything, held up his hand to stop her. "Ma'am, let me make sure I understand. You physically grabbed this child and brought him into your home against his will?" Karen nodded vigorously. "Yes, he was trespassing. I was making a citizen's arrest." The sergeant exchanged a look with his partner. "Ma'am, that is not how citizen's arrests work, and you cannot detain a minor child. Where is the boy now?" Karen pointed inside her house, where Tommy could be heard crying. The sergeant's expression hardened. "Ma'am, you need to release that child to his mother immediately. Then we need to have a conversation." When Tommy emerged, running to his mother's arms, both officers stepped inside to speak with Karen privately. I stood with Jennifer, who was shaking with a combination of relief and rage, holding her sobbing son. 20 minutes later, the officers emerged with Karen in handcuffs. Her face had gone from triumphant to confused to outraged in rapid succession. "This is ridiculous. I was protecting my property. You cannot arrest me for stopping a trespasser." The sergeant's voice was firm as he read her rights. "Ma'am, you are being arrested for kidnapping and unlawful restraint of a minor. You physically took a child into your home against his will and the will of his parent." As Karen was placed in the back of the patrol car, still protesting about property rights and HOA rules, she locked eyes with me. For the first time since I had met her, I saw something other than smug superiority in her expression. I saw fear. And I saw the dawning realization that her obsession with control had finally crossed a line from which there was no return. The patrol car pulled away, and Karen's perfect record, her position of power, and her reputation as the neighborhood authority figure disappeared with it. But I was not done. Not by a long shot. Because while Karen sat in a holding cell waiting for her bail hearing, I was making phone calls. You see, our HOA covenants had a clause that I had been studying for months. Section 12.7 stated that any HOA board member convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude or conduct unbecoming of a community leader could be removed by a majority vote of the homeowners, and their property could be subject to additional assessments and restrictions. I contacted every attorney I knew who specialized in HOA law. I reached out to my network of real estate professionals. And I discovered something fascinating. The small common area that Karen loved to police so aggressively, the one where she chased children away from the grass, was actually never properly deeded to the HOA. There had been a clerical error in the original development paperwork 30 years ago. That land was technically still owned by the county, held in a sort of legal limbo, and the county had been looking to sell off small parcels of unused land to raise revenue. Within a week, I had purchased that parcel. It cost me about the same as a used car, but it was worth every penny. I hired a surveyor to properly mark the boundaries, which revealed that Karen's driveway actually encroached onto this land by approximately 3 feet. Then I hired an attorney to send Karen a formal notice. Since she had been so concerned about trespassing, I wanted to make sure she understood that she was now trespassing on my property every single time she used her own driveway. The legal notice arrived while Karen was out on bail, preparing for her criminal trial. But it got better. I had my attorney research every single violation notice Karen had ever issued to homeowners in our neighborhood. Turns out, she had been extraordinarily creative in her interpretations of HOA rules, often citing sections that did not exist or applying rules that had never been properly voted on by the membership. We compiled a list of every homeowner she had fined over the past 5 years and filed a class action lawsuit against her personally for abuse of her HOA position and improper collection of fines. Then I did something that even I thought might be excessive, but Karen had traumatized an 8-year-old child, so I decided she deserved everything coming to her. I used my connections in real estate development to contact the investment group that owned the small strip mall adjacent to our neighborhood. They had been considering selling, and I made them an offer they could not refuse. I bought the entire property, which included a large vacant lot that backed up to Karen's house. Karen's backyard had a beautiful view of a wooded area, one of the features she loved to brag about. But that wooded area was actually part of the strip mall property. It had simply been left undeveloped and overgrown. Armed with proper permits and approvals from the city, which I obtained through my professional connections and by proposing a development that included community benefits, I began construction on a self-storage facility. Now, self-storage facilities are not particularly attractive, but they are legal, properly zoned for commercial areas adjacent to residential neighborhoods, and highly profitable. More importantly, they are tall. The design I approved included 3-story climate-controlled units with bright security lighting, required by code, that would be visible 24 hours a day. Karen's tranquil wooded view would be replaced with a wall of orange metal storage units and floodlights. But I saved the best for last. Remember that driveway encroachment? I had been generous in my initial letter, offering to grant her an easement for a small annual fee, something nominal like $500 a year. Karen, still believing she was untouchable despite her pending criminal charges, refused. She insisted the survey was wrong and that she had a right to use that land because she had been using it for 20 years. So I built a fence. A perfectly legal, code-compliant, properly permitted fence along the true property line. Karen's driveway was now 3 feet shorter, ending in a wall. To access her garage, she would need to remove the fence, which would be illegal, or she would need to rip out her driveway and rebuild it entirely on her own property, which would cost tens of thousands of dollars. Or she could pay me for an easement, the price of which I had now increased to $5,000 annually, plus back payment for the years she had been trespassing. The day the fence went up, I was standing in my front yard, pretending to water some flowers while watching the installation. Karen came home from a meeting with her attorney to find a 6-foot wooden fence blocking the last few feet of her driveway. She got out of her car, walked up to the fence, and just stared at it. Then she turned and looked at her house, where surveyor's stakes marked where her property actually ended. Then she looked across the street at the construction beginning behind her house, where a crane was already delivering the first steel beams for the storage facility. The sign announcing the development was clearly visible from the street, along with my company's name as the developer. Her head swiveled back to the fence, then to me standing calmly in my yard with my garden hose. I saw the exact moment when all the pieces came together in her mind. The land purchase. The lawsuit. The construction. The fence. The fact that the calm, quiet neighbor she had been harassing for months was not just a homeowner annoyed by petty violations, but someone with the resources, knowledge, and connections to systematically dismantle everything she valued. Her face went through a remarkable transformation. The color drained away, then returned as a deep red. Her mouth opened and closed several times without producing sound. Her hand gripped the fence post so hard her knuckles turned white. And in her eyes, behind the fury and shock, I saw the terrible understanding that she had not just lost this battle. She had lost everything. Her HOA presidency, her reputation, her view, her driveway access, and very likely her freedom, depending on how her criminal trial went. She had grabbed a child over a toy truck on her lawn, and in doing so, she had picked a fight with the one person in the neighborhood who had the means and the motivation to completely, legally, and permanently destroy her comfortable little kingdom of petty tyranny. Karen's mouth finally formed words, though they came out as barely more than a whisper. You cannot do this." I turned off my hose, smiled politely, and replied in the same saccharine tone she had always used with me. Actually, Karen, I can. I checked all the rules very carefully. You taught me how important that is. The expression on her face at that moment, the absolute comprehension of how thoroughly she had been outmaneuvered using the very system of rules and regulations she had weaponized against others, was something I would remember forever. If this story of perfectly legal revenge gave you that satisfying feeling of justice being served, please smash that like button and subscribe to Karen 8 World. We have got tons more stories about entitled people learning that actions have consequences. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and let me know in the comments what you think Karen's face looked like when she realized what I had done. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is just following the rules better than the people who tried to use them against you.